Hi guys, welcome to another Hustle to Wealthy episode. Today we want to talk about the wealth pyramid method. I'm here with Mark Robinson, my co-star. Hi mate.
Hey, how's things?
Good, thank you. So what we're going to chat about today is the foundation layer of our wealth pyramid method. And it is basically the bottom layer of the pyramid, foundational assets. What are they? How to look for them? What to keep an eye out on, or like what type of due diligence to do on that. Let's just brainstorm some of the stuff and break down every asset class. So, Mark, do you want to jump in and tell everyone all about the foundational assets?
Yeah, look, I mean, you'll see on the picture that comes up shortly, guys, of what the pyramid looks like, and the foundational assets is literally that, right? It's the bottom of the wealth pyramid, and the intention when you go into investing in foundation assets is to hold these assets forever, right? We get that things change, but it's all about the intention. And your targeted return is about that sort of 5% to 13% per annum. So those are the two things that you look at, right? Am I going to go and I'll hold this forever? And what's my targeted return? And once you understand that, your targeted time or staggered timelines and your return, then you'll be able to start to invest in that foundational asset. And this is where we've noticed that a lot of property investors get stuck, right? Because they've gone down that old school method about buying and holding and building out a portfolio over 20, 30, 40 years. And we've met property investors with a $5 million plus portfolio, and they literally still have to turn up on Monday to pay for it, right? That's still there. So it's crazy, right?
Interesting you say that, because I was having a conversation with a property investor the other day, and they had 50 properties in their portfolio and they did not have enough to live off. They had to show up every day to make sure that they would be doing it. And I'm like, how can you have 50? And they had something like a 40% lending. And I was going, if you only have 40% lending on 50 properties, how are you not making the cash flow that you need to make, right? Like there's literally just a couple of things to tweak and you be underway. So property is definitely one of those foundational assets, but not every type of strategy is a foundational asset. So we are talking here what? Buy and holds, right? Mainly.
Just straight out buy and holds. And as we sort of, go through the wealth pyramid and other episodes, guys, we'll talk about other property strategies as well. But it is literally you're buying and holding this forever, right? You're looking at multi-generational wealth that you're going to hold forever. You're going to educate your kids, your grandkids, so on and so on, that they're going to own these properties forever. And the types of investments that we look at are things like property, some blue chip shares, right? And that they have to be very well selective with, basically a history of never ever missing a dividend and what have you. So you got to be, and that's why I say some gold, silver, diamonds, right? Those sorts of things as can be foundational as well. And then one of the newest asset classes is Bitcoin. Now, when we look at cryptocurrency, personally, just me, Bitcoin's the only crypto I believe that can fit in foundational assets. However, it must be in a cold wallet, right? And if you don't understand what that means, then Bitcoin cannot sit in your foundational asset. And you have to truly believe in the power of Bitcoin. Okay, so just
And
those are
understand it too, right? I think
and
that's the key, one of the key things about foundational assets. If we go and say, hey, go buy, but we would never say that, but say, hey, go and buy 10 properties, buy and hold, and you don't understand positive or negative gearing and all that kind of stuff, then no, we're not sitting in foundational assets either. Like you have to be educated in the strategy. So with Bitcoin, it's the same thing. You need to know what Bitcoin is, how it works, really believe truly in the power of what it is about, and the power of growing in wealth too, right? That you like, I have Bitcoin in my foundational assets, set and forget. They are like what I call my superannuation fund, because I truly believe that by the time I turn 25, by the time in 25 years or so, when it's official retirement age, that's what I wanted to say.
You look good for your age, but
I
you're
know,
down in
right?
the my friend.
You say that. I actually got asked the other day for ID in
Uh,
the supermarket because in New Zealand they say if you look under 25, they're allowed to ask you if you're buying alcohol. They're allowed to ask you for ID. And man, was I smiling when they were asking me for ID.
Mate, he was either drunk or he was being extremely polite and didn't know that you were married.
Well, the funniest thing, it was a she, so that could still be.
Even better.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, I love when they do, because it does happen to me, but I love when they actually look at my age and they figure out in their head how old I am and how embarrassed they get that they actually asked. Well, I'm like, you just made my day, mate. I was like, keep asking.
I haven't been asked for ID since I was 15, but that's another story.
All right, but back to foundational assets. Question for you, because people will go, oh, I have property. I've got my own house.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your own house?
Yeah, look, if you've been down this track for many, many years, you know, Robert Kiyosaki, I think he says it best, your house, your owner occupied, your property is the biggest liability you'll ever own, right? Because you're constantly pouring money into it. And the way I see it is you can call it a foundational asset if you're willing to use the equity in it, right? And the other part is, I'll get some balloons or something now. And the other part is, right, if you're willing to sell it in the future and use the equity in it. That's the only real reason you can use it as a foundational asset. But in reality, you could call it a foundational liability, right? So just be aware of that, guys, that, yeah, it can be, but you've got to be willing to use the equity to buy either more property or invest in other asset classes. But in reality, it's not a foundational asset based on the way that we do things.
And I think you make a good point, because people go, this is an investment, and let's say we're not willing to take the equity, and they are not willing to do anything with the equity to invest in other opportunities. Like, to me, a home to live in it and pay off to just be in it is not an investment, full stop. Like,
No, in reality, like, a lot of, other older generations, right? Um, they've always seen their home as an investment for their children, right? After they go, I know people who own 10, 15, $20 million houses, that they're living in it and they're on the pension, right? That's crazy. And they're doing it just to give it to their children, right? And I look at that and go, man, sell your $20 million house, go into a $5 million house and have the time of your life, right? It's trying to spend the other 15 million. Go for it, people, right?
yeah,
Or even on smaller numbers, $5 million house, and go sell that, go into a $2 million house and spend the 3 million and have a blast. And most children would want you to do that, right? Rather than just wanting to hand it to them when you pass on, right? Go nuts if you're
yeah,
listening. If you're in that position, go nuts.
I agree, absolutely.
Not advice.
Just opinions. Yeah,
Just
absolutely. I
opinions,
agree.
absolutely.
I keep
Mark's
telling.
trying to sell my house and spend it. No, I fucking didn't.
Well, it's funny because my parents have property, and they have all this everything that they want to leave me. And Tyrell and I had this conversation multiple times with them. Go sell all of it and freaking blow it.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't need it. We are old enough. Like, I understand when you were when people were dying earlier and you lost your parents in your 20s or 30s, that your parents wanted to set you up. But let's face it, these days, your parent, most of the time, if you're blessed enough, your parents don't pass away until you're 60, 70 years old. So it's like, do you really, by then you should have made something out of your life. And if you haven't made something out of your life, maybe now it's time to look at educating yourself of how to make something out of your life, right? If you are waiting 70 years for your parents to pass away to get the inheritance, you're missing a lot of life, is all I want to say to that. A lot of life.
Yeah, it's pretty bloody morbid, right? Waiting for them to die so you can spend their bloody money. Come on,
Yeah.
people.
All right,
It's
back to foundational
not
assets.
an investment strategy, right?
Yeah, so one thing to consider when you're looking at foundational assets, because you go, oh yeah, I've got so much of, like you might be going, I have already that much in foundational assets. Foundational assets are great for long-term wealth, meaning something, like almost like a security or something that you want to keep for a longer period of time. They're not very great if you want to make cash flow or you want to grow your capital beyond capital growth, because the reality is, as much as you are aiming for capital growth, because you can't predict the market if it's going up or down, it's not actually an investment strategy. It's a gambling strategy to go and just say, I'm going to put all my money and I'm going to wait and hope that my property will make another million, right? Or my property will, because there's plenty of times if you're buying and selling the wrong market where your property is actually losing you money rather than making money. So when are foundational assets worthwhile investing in, Mark?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, right? I think it's going to come down to your uh, job or your business, right? Your discretionary investment income, right? Your net investable income, as we call it, because sooner the better in reality, right? Because we always look for that long term sort of goal, but we also talk about living for today, planning for tomorrow, which is why we do the two plans, right? We do our 10-year plan and we do our cash flow plan because they both can complement each other. So if you're already down, if you're uncomfortable investing in alternative assets, right? Alternative strategies and assets, then you get into foundational assets as fast as you can, buy as many as you can, providing that they do, stay cash flow positive, right? Positively geared. I think the worst thing that people have ever done is negatively geared property, hoping that it will rise in capital growth. So you've got to be careful for that. We've always said, give us $10 million making 10%, right? Over $1 million making 100%, right? Same output, but a different sleep at night factor. So I want you to be really careful when you're doing that. So just where are you at from an educational point of view? All right. If you're uneducated or not educated as well as you could be, then jump into foundational assets if you have the ability to buy property, right? And then get educated because you're an investor and you've started your journey. The worst thing I've seen is people who are uneducated jump straight into crypto, get absolutely spanked, and they'll probably never invest again in their life, right? And we'll talk more about cryptos later. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question. And when should you get in to foundations? Basically, as soon as you can. But if you need cash flow, then maybe other strategies at the top of the pyramid are going to be better for you now than a foundational asset over the long term.
And I love the fact that you said that education is the key. I mean, we talk about education all the time. However, like, most people go, yeah, 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 but my friend told me that this is a great opportunity and I should put money in it. Or I love that one, Mark said. And it's like Mark said nothing, right? Like we hear this all the time. But Mark got excited about this opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, have you looked at your Mark's portfolio in comparison to yours? Right. So never compare yourself to others and never take other people's word for what investment you should be in, including Mark and myself, right? Like do your own research, do your own homework. But I think the key thing about foundational assets is really look at the like how long till you want to achieve your end game. How much do you have to play with? Like play loosely, as in how much do you have to invest in? If you're starting with, $30,000, your investment portfolio will look very different to someone who's got 10, 20, 30, 40 million, right? Absolutely need to consider the timing of where you're at in your portfolio and where you want to go. Like how much are you trying to cash flow are you trying to achieve out of your portfolio? So definitely education is key, but also, like looking at like asking yourself, what do you want your money to do for you? Is probably a key one, right? Because if you have, say, 10,000 or $30,000 to invest, and you go, I'm going to put it all into silver and gold, well, that's not going to generate you the wealth you're looking for, to be financially independent. that's potentially giving you a month's worth or 2 months worth of a protection blanket, but that's as far as it's going to go. So really consider, what do you want your money to do for you? What's the key investment outcome you're trying to achieve out of your portfolio?
100%.
And then due diligence, like, let's chat about, like, how do we find these opportunities? What are the things that need to be considered from a due diligence perspective?
Nah, I don't think we should tell them how to do that for sure. I think we should do that in other episodes. I think that would work. Well, and I'm half joking, but the key there, right, is that's another conversation, because it is literally another 20 minutes. So, but I'm all good with that. So we got nothing else to do, right? We can
Well,
just keep chatting.
I'm going to share a couple of things, because I did promise due diligence right at the beginning. So I think,
Oh,
yes, so I think the thing to consider here are a few questions you can ask yourself, right? First, the number one question you want to ask yourself in any due diligence process is, where does it sit in your portfolio? So we've identified as foundational. How much capital have you allocated to foundational assets, right? And is the investment opportunity you're going into, have you even allocated that much capital to that asset class? And then ask yourself the importance about financial independence, right? Like, will it get me to my financial independence faster or slower, right? And you might go, hey, but you're not talking here about due diligence and properties. Well, this is, or in Bitcoin or shares or whatever, but this is the beginning of due diligence. The beginning of due diligence is really asking yourself these key questions
yeah,
in your portfolio to go and say, do I even, like, is that even an opportunity that I want to dive deeper into? And every strategy has its own complex due diligence research. So you really want to be clear first before you waste any time on, is this going to do what you need it to do right then and there?
yeah, without a doubt. And does it fit your money rules, right? Does it fit your values as well? Those are the key starts to the process. Otherwise, you're gambling, right? If you're not going to go and do research, you are gambling. And it's interesting how, like, Billy and I, we owned 3 properties before we actually started to get educated around what it was, right? We bought one, which was cool. It went up a little bit in value. So we bought a second one, and we just happened to keep the first one. Like, we didn't do it on purpose. And all of a sudden we were property investors, we had tenants, and then we moved, town, right? So we went from Townsville down to Brisbane, and we bought another property. So all of a sudden we had a portfolio of 3 properties, right? Before we went, well, hey, this is cool, right? What do we do from here, right? Does that make it, like, see, you can be an uneducated investor, whether it's, apparently the stats are quite high, right? It's like 80% of all investors, property investors, do it by accident, right? They buy one property, they see another one down the track, and they go, "Oh, that looks nice," and go and move into that one or buy it, and then all of a sudden they've got
Mm.
an investment. So, if that's how you've started your journey, fantastic. Like, it's don't change, but now get serious and get educated and start the actual due diligence process before you go and buy that third one, fourth one, fifth one, depending on where you are in your journey.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so that's foundation assets for you. You want to consider maybe looking at your portfolio and deciding, do you have enough foundational assets, or do you have too many foundational assets, and are those foundational assets actually working for you and the outcome you're trying to achieve? Would love to hear from you. Talk to you guys soon.
Yeah. Bye.